GameSpot's here at PAX West 2020, and we've played so many games, but we're here to tell you about our favorites from the show.
Without a doubt, my favorite game at PAX East was Streets of Rage 4. I'm a huge fan of the original Streets of Rage series. I think it's one of the most satisfying and just sort of stylized like beat 'em ups ever made, and I was so glad to see it return. This game in particular is coming from Lizard Cube, and they recently did the Wonder Boy remaster that came out a few years ago. So they're very much continuing on with that very stylized and sort of very hyper detailed 2D art. This game is just an incredibly stylized sort of take on sort of the beat 'em up genre, except it's a bit more modern now because we have not only expanded local co-op up to 4 players, but also online co-op as well. And me and Michael actually got to play with the devs, so we were just as a gang just going through the streets beating people up, and we actually, all 4 of us ganged up on this one guy, and we almost got up to 100 hits. And please show that clip if you can, by the way. I'm just very excited just to be able to go back to Streets of Rage again. I'm just a huge fan of the series, and this game just really, sort of ticked all the right boxes for me. So yeah, I want to see more of that game.
So my favorite game from PAX East was a little something called Alien Hominid Invasion. 15 years later, they're finally making a sequel to Alien Hominid. And I don't know, maybe sequel's not the right word. The devs don't like using the word sequel because they call it a reimagining. You're still an alien, you're still running and gunning and shooting secret agents and fighting these big bosses. You can still do that cooperatively. But where the first game sort of locked you onto one screen and it was a level by level progression, this one has almost rogue elements to it, where you have a city map and you're choosing which level you want to go to. So one might be more suburban, one might be a train, one might be more of a skyscraper kind of setting, and you're not locked to the individual screens like you were in the first one. You can go up, down, any direction. The aliens are way more mobile this time. You have a double jump, you can dive, dodge roll, you have iframes on those moves so that you're actually you can weave in and out of the chaos. And that's probably the most exciting thing about Alien Hominid still, is the chaos that's on screen. Which, by the way, also loot, new for this game. You got hats, you got guns with all sorts of special abilities, you've got passive abilities. So a lot of differences from the first game in this sequel slash reimagining slash whatever they want to call it. I just call it Alien Hominid Invasion.
Hear me out. Undertale meets Persona in an indie RPG. That's She Dreams Elsewhere. Now, if you know me, that's speaking my language. Having played it, you kind of get the Undertale vibes from the retro style, from the perspective of when you're in the overworld, and especially when you're in the perspective of combat, because it has that earthbound style, but it draws a lot of inspiration from Persona when it comes to the combat because of hitting weaknesses and having different party members with different skills. Now, those are the gameplay elements that hook me, but I think this game is more important because it's coming from an independent developer who's collabing with other people, but it's essentially a solo project for developer Davion Gooden. I see a lot of the passion that's brought into his game because he's writing it, and a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the character interactions come from an honest place. And I think he has the creative freedom to create characters that are more reflective of himself and the people that he knows. And that's kind of what's shining through. So I'm really looking forward to She Dreams Elsewhere. It's speaking my language, it's inspired by the games that I love, and I can't wait to see what it is when it finally launches.
My favorite game that I saw at PAX East was Magic Legends. It looks a lot like Diablo, it plays a lot like Diablo, and if you have seen Diablo before, or played a Diablo before, you might see an isometric action RPG and think, I've seen this before, I've played this before. The deck building aspects really add a whole new wrinkle to it. Rather than cycling through cooldowns, you're actually cycling through a deck of 12 cards. The build they had here was pretty overpowered. You could kind of hit any button and you do something cool, but you could tell just by the little taste that I played that eventually you're going to get to know your deck well enough, just like a real deck builder, where you're going to know what the powers are, you're going to know what the icons are, you can read the screen instantly and know when you want to trigger certain spells. It gives it a really cool look and feel. They had shown 2 classes before, the Mind Mage and the Geomancer. Those were basically an aggro and a sort of back off hit from a distance. The cool new thing they showed here was called the Beast Caller, which is basically a summoner. Any class can summon beasts, but the Beast Caller can summon a lot of them. A lot of their cards are built around summoning beasts, so I was just rolling deep with like 3 or 4 big creatures at my back, and we were just taking down monsters like nothing. I've never gotten into the Magic lore, but this game might actually finally convince me.
My favorite game I saw is Recompile, which is a self-described Metroid-inspired game with a Tron aesthetic. You play as a computer program who's in a hostile mainframe. Like I said, the whole thing, it looks exactly like Tron Legacy, which is just like aesthetically one of my favorite things ever, so already pretty on board with that. The Metroid-inspired elements come in sort of the way your character progresses. At the start, you're just gaining simple platforming abilities. You can jump, you can double jump, but then you get a gun and it becomes a third-person shooter. And then you get the ability to hack, which allows you to freeze time and manipulate objects. You can move boxes around and stack them, which you can use to solve different puzzles. And then you can also hack enemies and you can like make them fight for you. And that's where the game just starts like escalating in terms of like how your character like interacts with the world. Eventually, you're gaining the ability to do like the Metroid like screw attack where you can like infinitely jump and infinitely dash. You get a glide ability that just lets you fly anywhere in the world. So there's a huge level of freedom in how like you interact with the world, where you just start very basic and by the end you can explore this world in any way you want.
So those are the games we're looking forward to most from PAX East 2020. And for more from the show, you can check out all the gameplay we've captured on our YouTube pages. And if you want our impressions of everything we've played, you can go to GameSpot.com and check out our PAX East gallery. Thanks for watching.